Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast. This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes, and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode. I have a real treat for everyone today. My guest is very passionate about operational excellence, and we're going to have a great conversation about driving business results from applications. At Prabhjot Singh's company, Pyze, the goal is to enable companies to build successful businesses by understanding user behavior across all platforms. Using this methodology and technology, companies in process-heavy industries, for example, manufacturing, will be better equipped to do business in a technologically driven world. We are going to have a fun conversation, but first I want to tell you a little bit about my guest. Prabhjot Singh is a serial entrepreneur who has started multiple for-profit, social enterprise, and nonprofit ventures. He serves as president and CEO of Pyze, the most recent company he founded to enable the world's largest enterprises to improve business operations through AI-driven process intelligence analytics. He has more than 20 years of experience in sales, marketing, and product management. Prabhjot is an active participant in community and philanthropic affairs. This is really going to be a fun conversation and a fascinating topic, so let's get right to it. Prabhjot, welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast.
Cool. Thanks, Michelle. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to chat today.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. So first, I just want you, I talked a little bit in the intro about some of your background, but can you tell us a little bit more about how you became an expert in process improvement?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in enterprise software, for the last 20 plus years, and started my career early on, focused on application performance. Really helping, if you remember in the early days of the internet, we'd go pay a bill or rent a car and the site would just go kaput, right? And no one knew why, right? So I started my career as an early employee at this company called Wiley Technology that invented application performance management for websites, right? So to be able to look inside Java applications, .NET applications to understand what was broken right at the bits and bytes level. And, as we worked on those issues, I always sort of thought, well, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if you could do that at the business process level, right? Being able to sort of understand how a process gets orchestrated and identify what are the issues, right? Where are the bottlenecks? Where are the hotspots? Where are the friction points within each process, and then you can essentially identify those issues and resolve them, right? So that's an area that I've always been focused on, and I've been part of lots of manual exercises in my career of where we took a process, whether it was on the sales side or customer support or product development, and tried to understand what was broken, and those exercises were always so painful, right? And now we can have technology help us with those sort of things, and that's what we do.
That's great. Okay, so that's a great segue into telling us what your company does. So the name of your company is Pyze, and tell us exactly what you do, and in particular what you do for manufacturers. But tell us a little bit about your company and the background of your company and what you do for your customers.
Yeah, so we're all about process improvement at Pyze, right? We help organizations really automate the whole process improvement exercise. And that's really critical for, right, manufacturing. It's critical for any organization that has complex processes where you're interacting with upstream providers for supply chain, or downstream providers for fulfillment or shipping. It's critical to have a real world understanding of how a process actually operates, right? Because in most organizations, people have a sense of how they think processes work, but the real world is never like the way we imagine it to be, right? So understanding kind of where you have ping pong effect between steps in the process, where things get stuck, and if it lands on Dave's desk, it gets done immediately, or if it lands on John's desk, it waits for 2 or 3 days before it gets done, right? So being able to sort of look at both sort of the overall process orchestration, what are the different ways that work gets done, and we call these workflow variants, right, in the Six Sigma context. So the different strands of work, right, and which workflow is efficient, which one is not as efficient, right, and why they're different, right? So that helps with understanding root cause analysis, and then that understanding helps with making the right choices around automation, right? So depending on why you have a specific bottleneck, well, we may want to introduce automation. Maybe it's robotic process automation. Maybe it's intelligent automation. Maybe we need a BPM platform for better orchestration. Maybe it's just a training issue, right? That exists. So you've got to kind of get a understanding of that process. Today, as my friend Habib at Tech Mahindra says, you got to take an MRI of the process.
Oh yeah,
right?
I love that term.
And then you know where to.
Yeah, that term is so important, because that really is what you're doing. You're kind of looking inside and trying to solve the problem from the inside out, right?
Organizations can only advance towards maximum efficiency and make key business process improvements when they understand the inefficiencies and bottlenecks in their end-to-end processes. Low-code process mining delivers game-changing insights into the way your business processes really work in the real world, and is a snap to configure, providing results in as little as 2 weeks. Pyze integrates process and task mining in an easy-to-use platform that provides a rich understanding of the workflows that support business processes. Use Pyze process mining to answer questions like, where are the process bottlenecks? Where are the usage hotspots? Are my resources deployed efficiently? Do we have specific process or employee attributes that create variances in productivity? Why aren't we hitting our SLAs? How can I reduce the cycle time of my business processes? Low-code process mining enables automated generation of process maps and automatically identifies bottlenecks and hotspots in end-to-end business processes, with the ability to visually interact with the KPIs that matter. Pyze generates the real-world process map at the process stage and task level using entities, allowing us to optimize at each level of workflow execution. Optimization scope tells the system the business goal. I may be interested in execution duration to reduce my overall cycle time, cost to reduce operating costs, or other aspects that are relevant for the process, such as quality in this case. We can choose which stages or steps to investigate and specify the start or end stages. Let's look at all the orders that went to completion. Pyze automatically analyzes all workflow variants, and we can see a list of those on the right. Each variant represents a unique journey path for process execution. The selected workflow variants represent 46% of all orders within the selected time period. 63 orders were processed through the 7 steps with an average time span of 83 days. And we can see that on average, each of these orders cost the company about $3,000 in employee time. On the left, there's an interactive process map that provides a visual representation of the workflows selected, and we can view how workflows through the selected workflows and also see blockers to getting work done. We'll add a few more workflows. We can see that orders originate in one of 3 ways, either directly, via a channel partner, or from the marketplace. We can see some orders can skip steps, and there are loops like the one between sales review and technical review. There's a big hotspot at fulfillment. By clicking on a particular stage, we can interact with the process diagram. Now on the right, we're looking at segmentations of data for this particular stage of the process. Some of these charts are automatically suggested by our machine learning platform, and users can also add additional segmentations that are relevant for them. Charts can be based on any data in the system, such as cost, time on task, interruptions, or metadata attached to a specific event, or even profile data. Examining the segmentations, we can see that small part orders take longer to get started, and we're processing a lot of these, especially from channel orders. The next step would be to zoom into the fulfillment stage to get a richer task level view to further explore this hotspot. Get ahead of the competition and make data-driven decisions today with Pyze Lowcode Process Intelligence. Learn more about these capabilities and sign up for a personalized demo at pyze.com.
That's right.
So how does a client find you? So if they do they know they have a problem, or do you come to them with a problem, or do they reach out to you as a consultant to come in and take that MRI and dissect that maybe some sort of issue they're having so that you can come up with a solution? How does all that work?
Yeah, so most large companies will engage with management consultants, right? Usually it's once a year, right? Once every couple of years, maybe as they're doing their strategic plan, right? For someone to come in and analyze a given process, right? And help identify where there's issues. Now, this exercise is typically very expensive,
Yep.
right? Like you might spend 7 figures on such a consulting project, right? And it's long, and it's I'd say not complete, because typically what these consultants will do is they'll come in, they'll interview a few people, right? Because you can't interview every single person that works in the organization.
Right.
It's not feasible, right? They'll look at some end-to-end transactions, right? So if I'm a bank and I've got kind of a loan origination process, right? They'll look at spot check some loan applications and see how they went and where they got stuck, right? Or if I'm a manufacturing company, they might come in and go on the shop floor, and we've heard of the classical stand behind someone with a stopwatch to see, okay, how long it takes them to do things, right? Like, people still do that,
really,
right, to understand how that process works. Now, that's all well and good, but the problem is, right, because it's not complete, and it's somewhat subjective because you're not looking at all the data. You can only produce a result that's not the best that it could be, right? And the other issue is it becomes stale as soon as you do it, right? Because in today's world, where we've got supply chain issues one day, we've got to take half our staff and ship them to work from home because we only want key personnel on the factory floor because of a pandemic that's raging, right? You've got things that are happening constantly, the environment's shifting, and the analysis that we spent all this time and money doing doesn't have a very long shelf life, right? So that's typically how people do it, and we have companies that reach out to us that feel like they should be doing better, right? They're asking for help, and really, oftentimes people are asking to help learn how to fish, right? They want to have control of their own destiny, understand how they can actually improve their processes on their own. And with our platform, what we enable is plugging in the different data streams, right? So if I've got sort of let's say a manufacturing process with 10 steps, today there's a digital footprint of how long it takes a person to execute each of those steps. We understand, who's doing what work when they're doing it, so we can automate data collection into our platform, right?
Okay.
We'll also bring in the user system of record, right? So things like employee information, even salary information, right? And we combine all of that into into Pyze, and you can think of Pyze as a Vitamix, right? You put all this information in, and you get this amazing smoothie, which is a overall process map, right, of what does the real world actually look like. And then you can interact with that process map, right? You can play it. You can see how these different workflow variants behave, how work actually moves through the process, where it gets stuck. You can interact with it. You can kind of click on a step of the process, and you can drill down and see, okay, well, hey, if I've got 4 different plants, is one of them operating more efficiently than the other one, right? Are there best practices that we can adopt from one location and apply them to another location, right? Are there training issues that are apparent across all locations? Are specific types of products taking longer to procure, or deliver than other products, right? So you can kind of segment the data 10 different ways, right? Or 100 different ways. And then our AI engine, which actually sits underneath all the data and is evaluating the data in real time, can flag issues, right? It'll like, hey, here's an anomaly from this vendor being delayed for 2 weeks in a row. That's going to impact your downstream production a month from now, right? So we can actually look at the data and identify issues that, even though they're not a problem today, they'll become a problem tomorrow.
That's right. Data can tell us so much, as we all know, and collecting the data is only part of it. The other part is, once you have the data, understanding what to do with the data and how to create those solutions. So how long does it generally take? I mean, you said it was not a short process. How long does it take for you to be able to identify? I'm sure it's different depending on what's going on, but on average, to identify the problem and help your clients find a reasonable solution?
Yeah, I mean, so typically, we can get deployed in 2 to 4 weeks within an organization, and that's really, really fast relative to, doing it the old school way, right? Of sort of coming in and doing interviews and data collection. But what you get is almost near real-time visibility into 100% of the transactions, right, that are flowing through the system, right? So if you're assembling a product, you can kind of understand what the performance is at each step of that process, and then what you get is continuous improvement, right? You get monitoring of that process in real time as you move forward. So as any changes happen, whether it's hiring new employees and onboarding them, or upstream supply chain issues that are probably impacting that process, or fulfillment or delivery, right? You've kind of got visibility into all of those different pieces, and we can sort of start flagging issues very, very quickly. So typically, like, how long it takes is dependent on the cycle time, right? So if I've got a process that's, let's say, a day, right, to execute from an end-to-end perspective, well, then within a week, we can actually start providing visibility into, okay, well, here's the improvement points, right? Here's the low-hanging fruit. Here's sort of things that we should do midterm or long-term. If the cycle time is longer, well, then we might need a little bit more data. And then the other thing we can do is, if historical data exists, we can actually bring that into our system.
Oh, that's great.
So
yeah.
we can look backwards, going a month, 6 months, a year, whatever it is, and provide visibility into what's happening.
So you actually provide the software, or the platform. I'm sorry, you provide the platform, and then do you continuously monitor that for them, or did they monitor it, or does it work? Does it depend on what they need? How involved are you once all that is in place?
Yeah, well, like I said, we're oftentimes teaching people how to fish, right? So in the beginning, our team is involved in helping with the setup and rollout, right? There's training, there's knowledge transfer that we're doing, and then we assign certainly a customer success person to work with with each customer, right? So we want to make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful. All right. So if that means that we need to check in with them on a weekly basis, right, till they get confident, we'll do that. Or, it might be once every 2 weeks or once every month, right, as they progress to the point where, customers are like, hey, just we don't need you anymore.
Right.
Like, and we've got, customers that will, like senior managers, executives that will play back what happened yesterday, right? So how many orders did we deliver? Right, because you can easily go and hit play and you can visually see, okay, well, what was the work that was done yesterday? Or I can filter by a plant location and then identify, well, okay, how did I do versus the day before or the week before, right? And then are there things that we need to address today or tomorrow, right, based on that data?
Okay, cool.
So so you basically we're giving management a visual understanding of what's happening in their business so that they can make the right decisions.
Wonderful.
Right?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. So I think the term process improvement is kind of a broad term. What is your definition of process improvement, or does it have many definitions?
Yeah, well, it has many definitions, but we've coined this term called process intelligence that we use, right? And process intelligence, what it is like it's really three things, and the first piece is what we call integrated process and task mining, right? So what that means is understand how a process is orchestrated from start to end, right? What are the workflows, right, that happen where you've got kind of what they say the happy path of here's 10 steps that I need to walk through from start to finish to get this process completed. Then you might have the not so happy path of, hey, here's an exception that happens where maybe I don't have inventory to be able to complete this order, right? And I've got to kind of now go and kick off another process to procure this part that I don't have. Or you might have a path where I get to step 4 in the process and the quality review sort of says, hey, this is no good, or here's a defect, and I get bumped back, right? So each of these are kind of different workflows that a path could take on a factory floor, right? Now, that's what we call process mining, to identify what the process actually looks like. Then you've got task mining, right? So at each step of that process, what does a person have to do, right? So if my step 5 is, quality assurance, well, do I plug this device into an outlet? Do I make sure that it turns on? Do I ensure that the Wi-Fi connects to the Wi-Fi network? Can I get the full spectrum of capabilities that are expected, right? So you can think of that as task level work, because that's what each individual person has to do at each step of the process, right? And what we want to do is we want to make the overall process as efficient as it can be, and we want to make the task, right, really as efficient as it can be from a productivity angle, right? You want individuals to be as productive as they possibly could be doing the job that they have to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we kind of integrate both of these things, right, into process intelligence, and then we've got this AI engine, right, that's looking at the data, because you got thousands of orders, right, that possibly are going through a factory on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or depending on what you do. And what our AI engine does is analyzes the data, right, in near real time, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to look at anomalies, right? Where are there issues? Because we don't expect someone to sit in front of a computer and look at this stuff, right? The world has moved on from that, right? And but then once a defect is identified or an anomaly is identified, well, you can dive right in, right, and sort of try to figure out, okay, well, hey, what is this issue? Is it localized to a individual, a location, a order type, right, a shift, right, and then be able to sort of identify, okay, well, we can fix this by taking X and Y, Z actions, right, and then you take those actions, right, you change sort of the definition of standard work, right, for a task, or you re-architect a workflow so it's most effective. And then the next day and the next week, you can actually see the impact.
Right.
Like, hey, did it actually have the impact that I desired? Did we go in the wrong direction?
Right.
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 That happens sometimes too, right?
You learn something new then as well, right? You learn something from the failures as well.
Yeah, so you can so you've got kind of the data to then course correct and fix things, right? And you can keep doing that to get to sort of your best state, right? Your best self from a process perspective. So the business can really be operating on all six cylinders and achieve sort of and work towards achieving operational excellence.
Cool, yeah. So I have a interesting question for you. What is a McKenzie, and how is Pyze different than hiring a McKenzie?
Sure. That's a great question. And, I've worked with McKenzie in the past. McKenzie's been great.
What is it?
So it's a consulting company, right? So it's one of a large management consulting company like Boston Consulting Group, right? McKenzie that typically get engaged for process consulting.
Okay.
Right, where you can bring in McKenzie and sort of say, okay, hey, I've got this process. Tell me, do an audit. Tell me how how I can fix it, right? And I would describe Pyze as McKenzie in a box, so to speak.
Okay.
Right? Because so instead of going through this manual process, right, that often is done by consulting companies, we're actually automating that whole process, right? We're making it real time. It's so much cheaper, right, to execute. So that's kind of the big differentiation between us and McKenzie, right?
Okay, all right, good. I would love to hear some examples about how your company has been able to help other companies solve problems. Can you, without divulging any names or anything proprietary, can you tell us some examples about how you've helped some companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work in a number of sectors, right? Financial services to supply chain to logistics, right? We work with the government, right? So like the post office, the U.S. Post Office, we recently been working with them to help them improve the efficiency of placard movements for mail, right? So mail comes to a post office, it goes to a processing plant, right? Gets sorted, it gets put on in these huge containers that get put on trailers, and then those trailers go to wherever they need to go, right? And then to a receiving station, and then eventually someone delivers that mail to your mailbox, right? But you can imagine it's a very complex process where you have lots of different touch points, and each touch point can potentially result in a failure, right? So understanding kind of how these placards move from one location to another, how we can potentially optimize their movement and identify failures and address those failures, right, is critical to helping the post office increase their efficiency, right? Because they're processing something like 50 billion pieces of mail a year, right? And they get a bad rap sometimes, right? But it's a massive, massive, impressive operation.
Absolutely.
Right? And they're continuously focusing on how do we make that better, right? They've got something like 500 industrial engineers that work towards that on that. So where we come in is helping organizations understand the existing process, identifying where there might be failures, where there might be opportunities to improve that process, and then moving forward from there. We've we recently worked with a large electrical manufacturing company that processes orders, right? So for their order management system, going from order management to fulfillment to delivery, helping them sort of streamline that end-to-end process, right? Where the old system that they were using, would take something like 60 to 80 days to actually process those orders. And a lot of that was just waiting on other people, right, to sort of go through and, procuring the parts that are needed, and then eventually getting to sort of, the actual fulfillment piece. So by identifying what the issues are and then using sort of newer technologies to automate those processes, right? They're able to cut that time down from 60 to 80 days to something like 20 days.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So
huge difference, right?
Huge difference, right? For them as a business, for their customers' happiness, right? And their ability to grow their business, right? And we see a lot of demand, right? Like we've got an engineering company that we're working right now. They are interested in taking their RFP process, right? So they go and they build plants all over the world, ammonia plants and refineries and things of that nature. And as part of that, right, they're bidding for RFPs, right? And that whole RFP process is manual, right?
Really?
Where they're using Word documents and Excel sheets, right, to actually execute that RFP process. And by and large, like each RFP can be probably put into 10 or 20 different templates, right? Because they've been doing it for so long, they know how to do it so well. So the first step in their transformation journey is really understanding their current process today, right? For each of those workflows. And once you understand that process, then you can sort of say, okay, well, where are the inefficiencies? Where are the bottlenecks, right? And then we can decide the right technologies to use, right? What do we need for automation? What do we need for business process management? What do we need for, AI, right, to help accelerate things or automate the work that we're doing? And then actually then go ahead and implement that and then make sure that, okay, well, are there things that we missed, right? Are there areas that we could do better? Right. And it should start with understanding what you have today. Right. Whereas, like, I'll give you another example of a manufacturing account that we're engaged with now, where, they got sold on robotic process automation, right? So they spent 9 months implementing this RPA capability, and they ran it for about 3 months and realized that it actually was the wrong solution. Right.
Yeah.
And they spent the next 3 months ripping it out and going back to the old way. Right.
Yeah. So
in order to sort of, right, and that's kind of like operating without taking the MRI, right, so to speak.
Yeah.
You've got to first understand what the current state is, right? Have a good perspective on, well, okay, this is an issue because of X, Y, and Z, right? Not just understand the issue, but understand the root cause. And then you can make the right decisions.
Right.
Right. Because otherwise you're going to be, if you just sort of say, okay, I want to transform, I want to migrate these systems to the cloud, right? And there's a lot of buzzword bingo going around these days, right? So
right.
You're just going to be more prone to missteps versus if you understand what's what.
So a misdiagnosis can be just as dangerous as totally ignoring the problem. If you,
yeah, maybe even more, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like
So,
just imagine if you take out the wrong kidney.
exactly. Right. So, I mean, that's a great analogy. That makes it pretty clear what you're doing. So once you have all that data and you make these recommendations to these companies on how they can improve efficiencies and improve their processes, do you then provide the solutions, or do you just make the recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, so typically we work with our customers to give them the ability to make the right decisions.
Okay.
Right. Like we've got certainly expertise on our team, right, in manufacturing, in financial services, right, in supply chain, retail, right. So we've got industry experts that can support our customers, but they're the real experts, right? Like no one knows my business better than me. Right.
That's
like,
right.
And we have that same sort of perspective on our customers' business, right? No one knows their business better than them. And what we want to do is give them the data, give them the tools that they need to be able to make the right decisions for their business, right? And then be able to quickly identify emerging issues, right, that they can tackle and they can address. So that's the perspective from which we operate, and certainly, as customers need help, both sort of on a operational perspective. Okay, well, how do we do continuous improvement, right? Because that's more of a mindset change,
right?
It's a paradigm shift of okay, I've got a process I've been doing for a decade or longer. Well, how do I improve that process? And how do I run experiments that enable us to validate whether the changes that we're making or we want to make are going to deliver the results that we want, right?
Yeah.
And this is what Silicon Valley does so well, right? So if you look at kind of all these industries that technology is starting to kind of eat up, they're very good at experimenting, doing A/B testing, understanding what's working, what's not working. And, now you've got kind of this whole slew of, even in the manufacturing space, right, 3D printing companies that are coming in.
Absolutely.
And, that are looking to disrupt your traditional manufacturing. And, one of the things that I think everyone has to do is get their business to be running as effective as it can be, understand where there's bottlenecks so that they can improve their margins, they can improve the quality of the services that they're delivering, so that they're operating at their best capability.
Makes perfect sense. So Pyze has something called a low-code angle. What is that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've oftentimes when we get brought in, right, someone's got this legacy infrastructure, right? You've got applications that are running on mainframes that have been run there for the last 10, 20 years. You've got kind of homegrown apps that maybe are written in Java or .NET or some older technologies, right? We see a lot of customers even running applications on AS400s, which are legacy mainframe type systems, right? So what people want to do is take these systems and applications and migrate them to something modern, right? So there's this low code movement that's really catching on, where people don't need to have the same level of expertise you needed to write applications, right? So a lot of these platforms have kind of WYSIWYG editors, right?
Yeah.
Where you can drag and drop components. They've got templates. If I've got kind of a customer service application that I need to roll out, they've got a framework for that, where you can kind of fill in the blanks with your business rules, and you can be up and running very quickly, right? You can code stuff 5 to 10 times faster, right? And
Really?
we work with a number of these sort of low-code platforms like OutSystems and Pega systems, right, and Mendix and others, which provide the ability to build these applications very, very quickly. And we've got really deep integrations. So as people build these applications, we can automatically understand the process orchestration, right? We don't need to look at log files. We don't need to, do like expensive data modeling, right? That you often have to do with getting data from these old school systems. We've got plug and play compatibility with all the major low-code platforms, right, in the market. So what that enables us to do is provide low-code process intelligence, right, where it doesn't take a lot of work and effort to actually get Pyze set up and collecting data, and you can do this analysis across tons and tons of applications, right? We're in the process of rolling out with a company that's got 70 applications, right, that they've built over the last several years. And now they're focused on, okay, well, how do we optimize these applications? And because it's done on a low-code platform, it can be done, this analysis can be done really, really easily.
Wow, that's fascinating. So that's a good segue into my next question, which is just about trends. I mean, we're at the very beginning of 2022, right? So what are some of the trends that are happening or that you foresee happening this year in manufacturing?
Yeah, so I think we're going to see a lot more focus on automation in manufacturing. I think we saw some of that last year. We're also going to see a big focus on digital transformation of these legacy systems. That and that kind of encompasses the low-code platforms, right? Like automation technologies like robotic process automation, using more AI decisioning, right, across the board, right? Because it's not just like manufacturing is not sort of a simplistic process, right? There's lots and lots of processes that enable sort of a composite manufacturing process from supply chain, right? You've got kind of aftermarket care on the other side, right? So warranty, right? There's all of these processes that exist, and there's systems that support all these processes. And I think what people have learned over the last year, and certainly like I've learned, that like you've got to put yourself in a place where you can quickly reinvent your business models and add new models. Right, because like everyone's had to do that, right?
Absolutely.
During COVID, right? Whether it's the way our workforce was deployed, to the way we sell, to even new services that are being rolled out, right? So you can only do that if your technology infrastructure is agile, right? That you can add new capabilities easily. You don't need to spend a lot of time maintaining old systems. So we're going to continue to see a lot of focus on cloud migration. And, that's sort of an area where we focus on organically because, as people are doing these types of migration projects, like the worst thing you can do is lift and shift, right? So if you've got a poor process or poorly performing applications on this side, you don't just want to take those to the cloud, right?
Yeah.
You want to understand where those issues exist so you can optimize them and you can improve them, and then you roll out something that runs better, right? So it's not just about addressing the technical issues in your application. You should focus on the process piece of it as well.
It sounds to me that when you're performing that MRI, you have to not only make the correct diagnosis, but then you have to perform the correct surgery so that you make the right improvements. So many pieces of the puzzle have to fall into place, right?
They do. Absolutely. Well, if it was easy, everyone could do it, right? As they say.
Exactly.
Exactly. But having a blueprint of sort of where you are today is critical to understanding where you need to go, right? And once you kind of have those two pieces, right, then you can kind of understand how you're moving right, towards that goal, right?
Exactly.
It's sort of like you've got a GPS that can guide you,
Right.
because you can sort of see, well, okay, well, did I take a wrong turn, and what do I do to course correct so I can actually get there, right?
Right.
Like no one looks at the GPS once you get there, right? Like and unfortunately, a lot of these transformation projects, like I think something like 67% of these projects don't deliver the value
Right.
that CEOs expect them to deliver, because that roadmap is not in place and people aren't looking at the project performance along the way, right? From a business perspective, right? That's sort of like, like you don't ever get to the destination and say, okay, now let me look at the GPS and make sure I'm at the right place, right?
But using that GPS analogy, how do you know that you have arrived at your destination?
Yeah, I mean, so
you don't have Siri there telling you have arrived. How do you know?
That's right. Well, the thing to keep in mind is, like, you will never really arrive at that destination, right? Because there's always a opportunity to improve something else, right? That's what Six Sigma and lean methodologies are all
That's
about.
right.
Is like, how do I trim the waste that I see today? And once we actually look at the low hanging fruit and we address it, well, you can actually look backwards and see, okay, well, this is where I was a year ago or a month ago or a week ago, and this is where I am today, right? So you know that you're making progress, and you measure that progress based on your key performance indicators, right, for your business, whether it's speed of delivery, cost of production, right, like margin, right, whatever it is that you sort of care about from managing your business perspective. But beyond that, it's once you get to that point, okay, well, let's identify what else we can fix, right? What else?
Exactly.
Like, is there a new technology that can help us do things better, or are there training issues? Is there consistency across all plants, right? So there's you never want to kind of become complacent, right?
Sure, absolutely. So from your perspective, what does the factory of the future look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's all robots. People worry about sort of, hey, it's all automated, and we don't need any people. Maybe we'll get there one day on Mars or something, right? But I think, the automation technologies are not far enough along yet, right? Where they can do everything themselves, and they won't be for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we've got to look at, how do you integrate technology into the factory, whether it's using computer vision to assess quality, right? Whether it's looking at, robotic process automation for specific, like, manual repetitive tasks that people are doing that they can do better. Or identifying, poor performing workflows that we can eliminate, right? Or, addressing specific bottlenecks, right? Like, I think that is sort of the near term factory of the future, where you have sort of automation meets, human, right? To make sure that the best product is being produced at the right cost.
Right.
Because I don't think we ever want to sort of talk about, okay, hey, we just things built as quickly as possible, right? Because then you might sacrifice quality, right? Or as cheap as possible, because then you'll definitely sacrifice quality, right? So I think we want to deliver the best product for customers, right, at the most reasonable cost possible, right, at an optimal speed. So working towards that is, I think, the mission for the business leaders that are running these factories.
Right. I don't think continuous improvement will ever go out of style. People are always going to want to continue to improve. That just makes sense. Why wouldn't you? There's always going to be something in the future that's better than what we have today. So there's always something good to look forward to, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's good. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, this has been so fascinating. And I love hearing all your examples and hearing you talk about this, but I want to give you a chance to give us the last word. Give us some final thoughts on whatever you want. You can tell us more about your company or tell us more about what you think the future of manufacturing looks like. Just give us your kind of final thoughts so we can wrap it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michelle, this has been an absolute pleasure. So thanks for having me.
For me too.
On.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd say, for anyone interested in looking at sort of continuous process improvement or, understanding how process intelligence can benefit your business, right? Check out Pyze. You can kind of see it's Pyze. Check out our website. Your LinkedIn, wherever. I'd love to speak with you if you've got specific areas that you want to focus on from a process improvement perspective, right? I know supply chain is like a universal issue these days for many of our customers. So if you want to look at better vendor management or improving sort of supply chain, if there's an issue related to task execution, right, in terms of increasing productivity, improving the business results of applications that are being deployed to facilitate these manufacturing processes, right? Or there's other kind of business related processes that you're interested in delving deeper into and getting a better understanding of. Or you're just interested in looking at, hey, how could we possibly leverage automation or, some of these new technologies based on what you're doing today? I'd welcome that conversation. So,
that's great. We'll make it easy for the listeners. We'll put all those links in the show notes. So all you have to do is click that link and you can learn more and get in touch with Prabhjot. And we really appreciate having you here. It's been fun. Thanks so much for all your knowledge and expertise. And just thanks for being here. This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.